This story is called Every Year a Kid in Our Town Goes Missing. We Just Found Out Why. For 20 years, a kid would go missing in our town each summer. They'd vanish without a trace and without evidence of foul play, nor proof that anyone had actually died. No bodies were recovered during the investigations, nor was anyone retrieved alive. By all means, they seem to have disappeared into thin air. Naturally, such occurrences come along a multitude of conspiracy theories, ranging from monsters to kidnappers with supernatural powers. Most of us, however, blame the lake. It was a beautiful piece of water hidden in the idyllic woods of Arboretum. Despite appearing perfectly still on the surface, there had always been a strong undercurrent around the center of the lake. It was theorized that it was caused by an underground river, but thus far, no one had been able to prove it. So, after multiple ignored warnings to stay away, the police simply put up a barrier around the center, where the current felt the strongest. Me and my friends were some of the many people to go swimming there, despite the rumors. We absolutely loved the lake, with its crystal clear waters and bizarre lack of animal life. We'd spend many summers there, never leaving, until our skin had turned crispy red, or by the tempting promise of ice cream from our parents. We were young, and we felt invincible. Years passed, and the three of us were about to graduate high school. While we were naturally excited to move on to college and new adventures, we desperately needed one last hurrah to say goodbye. So, in the summer of 2019, we decided to solve the mystery of the missing children. Thanks to our part-time jobs, we'd been able to save up a decent amount of cash. We used some of it to purchase cheap bird-watching cameras. Our plan was to place them in the areas where the kids had last been seen. It just so happened that most of those areas were within the woods, concentrated around the lake. The whole area was weirdly shaped, which meant we'd have to keep an eye on parts of the lake ourselves. The center in particular was hard to get a view of from the shore. We thought ourselves so clever to have come up with such a genius plan. Little did we know that the police had thought of the exact same scheme, only without results. Nevertheless, we set out on our adventure to save our town, thinking nothing could stop us. By the time we placed our cameras, no one had gone missing. We were hoping to catch the moment as it happened and swoop in to stop it. In hindsight, it was a poorly thought out plan, but we were teenagers. What else could one expect? We strategically put the cameras around the forest and some by the water. Each day, we'd collect the recordings to check the footage. In addition, we'd camp out around the lake and just enjoy the weather. The summer went on with little incident until the first week of August. Then, a kid by the name of Alex Florence had inexplicably gone missing in the middle of the day. He'd last been seen throwing a ball around with his sister by the lake. He was only 7 years old. The police did their usual search, checking street cameras and sending divers into the lake to search for drowned bodies. Still, nothing could be found. We went through the footage, but couldn't find anything. The only part we hadn't yet investigated was the center of the lake. I had just spent some extra money on a waterproof camera and figured we could at least find out where the current went. We connected the camera to a flashlight and tied it to a rope. We took a canoe and paddled past the barriers, ready to finally solve the mystery. Though we couldn't see the bottom of the lake, we expected it to be around 50 feet deep. I tossed the camera into the warm waters and measured the depth using the rope. Before long, it had sunk out of sight. 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50. It had reached the supposed bottom, yet it kept sinking deeper and deeper. Within a few minutes, it had reached 100 feet. I looked at my friends in disbelief, wondering if it had been swept away. But based on the direction of the rope, it was just going further down. Once our rope had reached the end of its length, we had no choice but to pull it back up. Hopefully, the footage could provide us with some answers. We eagerly returned home and uploaded the recordings to my computer. The quality of the video was only semi-decent. At first, it showed the clear waters below, only lit up by the flashlight attached to the camera. It sank straight to the bottom at 50 feet, just as expected. Then, we saw something else. It was just a tiny hole that opened and closed, pulsating like a mouth, trying to chew on something. It only opened for brief periods of time, which is probably why it went unnoticed for so long. Nevertheless, it produced a current that immediately sucked in our camera. It got pulled through a tiny tunnel, small enough for a child, but too narrow for an adult. The tunnel went on for another 20 feet or so before opening up into a giant underwater cave. There, it kept sinking deeper until something horrific finally came into view. It was Alex Florence, the missing kid. He'd been partially digested by strange plants emerging from the cave wall. They reached out like tendrils looking for food. The boy was little more than barren bones, only recognizable by the fragments of his clothes still there. The camera sunk even deeper. At last, we could see the cave floor. It was littered with hundreds, if not thousands, of animal and human bones, left to be forgotten for all of eternity. That's when we pulled the camera back up. We'd reached our goal, but another kid had died. Next, we just handed the footage over to the police, and that was it. This year, when we visited our hometown for the holidays, the lake had been completely blocked off. We set out to have one last adventure, but the image of those bodies is something we'll never get over.